Hello, everyone. Welcome to this episode of Ecoffee with Experts. I'm your host, Matt Fraser. And on today's show, we're going to be talking about how to get to the top of Google in 2022 with none other than Natalie Henley. Now, Natalie is the CEO and owner of Volume 9, a full-service digital marketing agency headquartered in Denver, Colorado. She has a bachelor's of political science degree from the University of North Carolina and is a sought-after speaker at events such as Digital Summit Denver, Media Bistro, Online Marketing Summits, and Simpo, just to name a few. She is a 360-degree marketing professional and is passionate about helping businesses uncover key strategies to help them scale and grow. When she's not running around trying to slap the V9 logo on everything, you might find Natalie board gaming, water skiing, hiking, traveling, and spending time with her husband, daughter, and golden retriever named Dudley. Natalie, thank you so much for being on the show. Pleasure to have you here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Hey, you've had an interesting journey so far. How would you describe yourself as a high school student?
Huge nerd.
Huge nerd?
So I know like lots of people go back and be like, oh, I was so cool. I was not cool in high school. I was in the band, which was basically the coolest thing I did. I was the vice president of the Latin club.
Yeah.
Semper ubi sub ubi.
Oh, wow.
I was, AP classes, super driven. I never ditched class. Never tried alcohol in high school. I was super like straight-laced on the path. Nerd. So I would describe myself as a nerd.
Yeah. Yeah, I was as well. Yeah, it's interesting how high school is so complicated.
It is. I loved it. I mean, I had a great time, and I had a lot of friends in band and fellow nerds. And when we all went to college together, it was great.
Yeah. I went from being suspended in grade 10 for vandalism to coming in third for valedictorian in grade 12. And they made me the class historian instead.
Oh my goodness. I wish I had like a cool story. I was like, I vandalized something. Like I got nothing.
Yeah.
I got nothing cool.
If it wasn't for this vice president sitting down and talking to me, she made a big impact in my life. But that being said, cool. You went to college or university, wherever you want, University of North Carolina, and you got a political science degree. How did you transition from political science to getting involved in digital marketing? Could you tell me a little bit about that story?
Yeah, for sure. I went to Chapel Hill, and I was really fortunate because I was a super nerd. I went to Chapel Hill on a full ride. So, at the time, like, I was just like, oh man, I'm super driven. What do I want to be? Everybody around me was like, oh my gosh, you're super type A. You should be a lawyer. So I was like, all right, cool. Well, I'll get a political science degree because I care about politics. And I loved studying political science. It was a lot of fun. I really wish someone had pulled me aside, like a counselor or just professor, and been like, hey, so here's the deal. Political science is a lot of fun, but this is not a useful degree. Like throw something else in there. Thank goodness at some point I tossed in a minor for business administration. Political science, it was so much fun. But like, I can tell you how few times game theory comes up in the average conversation or, workplace. But I was so thinking sure I was going to be a lawyer. And then I graduated and I was just like, I was ready to not be in school anymore. I was ready to get out and do something. I was talking to a lot of lawyers and I just couldn't find a lawyer that was like, this is great. You're going to love this. And I was like, all right, well, maybe before I invest in grad school, I should like spend a year or two, just getting into the workforce, making a little money, maybe work for a lawyer, just make sure I like this. So I had this thought of like, maybe I'll be a paralegal or something like that. And then so I graduated in 2007, right into the recession.
Oh yeah. There was the great recession.
Yep. So when I graduated, I got a job on a campaign, in so many reasons why that was a terrible campaign. He was running it way too early, blah, blah, blah. But I got a job. I got paid like a couple $100 a week, which was enough to basically cover pizza and beer. And we worked sun up to sundown 6 days a week.
Wow.
Knocking on doors, going door to door.
Wow.
And then from there I was just a really hard worker. That's I think a work ethic thing that just like my family instilled with me. We're a family of immigrants, and it just, my great grandmother, came through Ellis Island, and she was a full-time maid, and like we're a family of hard workers.
Yeah.
Hard workers and salespeople. That's who we are.
Yeah.
So I was like, all right, well, whatever job you do an effing great job. So I did a great job on my $200 a week door knocking job. So that landed me a job at a mailing company, and I got paid minimum wage to stuff envelopes. And I did that for about a month or two. And the guy, by the time I decided to kind of go to the next thing, the guy was like, I'll put you in charge of this whole thing. Like I hired you in entry level, and you reorganized processes, and you're stuffing envelopes better than everybody else, and you're not taking breaks, and you're grammatically editing your letters that you're writing. And I was like, no thanks. But I had met who's now my husband, my boyfriend. On the campaign, and he had gotten a job up in DC, and I was like, well, you know what? I kind of want to go up to DC with him. So the guy who owned the mailing company is like, well, I know a guy in DC. Let me talk to him. And he talked to him, and I got an internship, and I was actually paid below minimum wage to move up to DC, which let me tell you how hard it is during a recession to be paid below minimum wage in a city like Washington, DC.
Yeah, it's not cheap there, is it?
It's not. So my husband, so we got a they call it a well, it doesn't really matter. It was a basement. We got a basement. A basement with a bathroom. That was basically
basement suite.
Basement suite, yeah. We basically crammed ourselves in the basement. We lived there for a year. I did really well in my internship, so I got hired on, and I got hired at this market research company. It was super fun. And it, same thing of just like
was that the Findability group?
No, that was called Strategy One Edelman. So Edelman is the largest privately owned public relations company in the U.S. They're huge. And so I got hired in the DC office in market research. And part of it is, now we're like the recession's roaring. Everybody wants to work at Edelman because it's this cool big PR agency and you need agency experience. But nobody wanted to work at Strategy One because it was the nerdy data division. So I got to work in market research, and I got to do not only sales, but I got to design discussion guides. I got to work on surveys. I got to analyze data. And again, it just worked myself up, but I learned a lot, and it was super fun. And it was really amazing to me how little value a lot of marketers put on data, but how impactful it can really be. And I think that was the moment in my career that I was like, oh my God, I'm data driven. Like that's the way to do marketing. It's like you can always throw a bunch of marketers in a room and they can come up with really fun, creative ideas when they're drinking beer. But that's not really where like the best marketing campaigns come from.
It comes from research and data.
It comes from research and data. And at the time, I remember how expensive it was because there was just very little data you could get without things like surveys or discussion groups and all those focus groups. So then my husband and I moved out to Denver, and I got a job back down to like minimum wage at this little teeny tiny digital agency called Findability Group. And this gal, Heather, was building up this company. Basically, she was a speaker. She knew a lot about paid search. And so she decided to make this little agency. And, I started off like I started off just, she basically needed a person that could just like, I think I was officially hired to like manage her schedule. I think I was like a speaker assistant was my first title. And then pretty quickly I was like, wow, nobody here knows how to sell. Turns out I come from a family of salespeople. Why don't you let me do the sales? So they let me do the sales. And then I was like, hey, nobody here is doing social media for clients and they're asking about it. I know how to do social media. Why don't you let me do it? And it was really cool. Like basically Heather just wanted to speak, and she just started tossing me the keys. She's like, oh, you're excited about social media. Oh, you're interested in scaling a company. Neat. Oh, you want to start a department. You want to learn SEO. And then she started to become a really successful speaker. So then she wouldn't take free speaking gigs. So I was like, well, I'll take them. I'll go to a meetup and teach people how to do SEO. So I just started taking everything she didn't want. And it just became this really cool thing. So by the time Heather realized that she really didn't want to own an agency anymore and she just wants to speak, I essentially tripled the size of the company. By the time she sold it, we had more than 10 employees. And I think I was the fourth employee when I got hired. She sold it over to this guy named Chuck. Yep. Chuck at Volume 9. And so I came over.
Chuck renamed it.
Yeah, right. So, well, really what it was is Chuck had already started Volume 9. So his agency was already in existence.
He
Volume
absorbed
9,
it.
yep. So what he did is he just absorbed Findability Group, and he took on the
Yeah.
clients and all of that and hired the
Wow.
team over. And I remember like early on, like we had so much trouble figuring out what my title has been. I don't think I have ever at my time at Volume 9 had a title that existed before I had the title. Every time it's been like some weird title. So he hired me on to run the marketing, and then I did marketing and sales, and then he promoted me to vice president to run client services, and I just started like working my way up. And gosh, 4 or 5 years ago, I think one of the things that was super awesome about Chuck is that, and like our partnership over the years, is that Chuck is one of the people I've worked for that just has such good self-awareness of where he's strong and where he's not strong, and what he likes and what he doesn't like. And he knew that like what he didn't want to do is have to manage the team. Like that is not, that's not his dharma. Like he likes to mentor, he likes to teach people, but he doesn't like to manage. He doesn't like this
neither do
full
I.
operating a company. Like it's just not what he wants to do.
No.
That's not what he's like. He designed Volume 9 originally around a system. Like he likes to build systems.
Yeah, me too.
That's his thing.
Yeah.
He's kind of that classic, if you know like the EO breakdown, like he likes to be the visionary, he likes to have ideas.
Yeah.
But
I need
to
take that test.
Yeah, you totally should.
Yeah.
So anyway, so a few years ago, he's like, I think he made me president and then CEO. And I remember later we couldn't really tell what the difference was, but it was basically like, he's like, I don't want to have to run this. And so I just started running it. Yeah, it is. And then
for someone who doesn't have the skill set, like you obviously have the skill set and the personality to do so, but for those of us who don't, we need to hire people who will, and so that's pretty awesome that it's an amazing story. So go on.
It totally is.
Then here's the we're getting to the climax, which is the most amazing thing.
So then, I think it was June this year. Chuck asked for a meeting at my house, and we sat down, and he basically was like, I think I want to be done. He was like, I took over as a part owner right before COVID, and him and I got the agency through COVID together and all that stuff. So we sat down in June, and I'd already had part of it. And he's like, you know what? He's like, I think I'm done just running an agency at all, like being involved in an agency, like having a team, trying to grow it. He's like, I kind of want to. He wants to like go and consult with startups and get his hands a little dirty in digital again. And he kind of, he's got the expertise. He kind of just wants to be like that rock star dude that you bring in to like make shit happen.
Yeah.
That's what he wants to do. And there's just not a spot for that at the agency. And, especially like where it's like, no, we need you to stay, building systems and building your CRM and, and all that stuff. He's just like, that's not the direction. And like, and Chuck, if you know Chuck, he never, like he told me at the time, I remember in June, I laughed because he sat down with me like, let's call it the 1st of June. And he was like, I think that, this will be my 2-year plan. And I was like, I have never seen you make a dramatic life change and do it in less than like 90 days or more than 90 days. Like he just, when he decides, he does.
He just
he does. So we started the conversation in June, and by August 1st, we shook hands, signed paperwork. I bought him out.
And you bought him out.
Yep.
That's amazing. That is such an amazing story. How you moved from having a political science degree that didn't have any, maybe, I don't want to be rude. Canadians who don't like to be rude. Didn't have any, I don't know, like you said, that's not going to really get you a job or anything.
Yep. Nothing about marketing and political science degrees. Nothing.
Yeah, there's nothing. No correlation between that whatsoever. Although, as I said, I've met people who got law degrees and they would rather chew glass than be a lawyer. So it's just interesting how, people maybe start out in something and get a degree in something, but, they end up in a totally different career. In fact, I've met 2 lawyers who are marketers and an economist who's a marketer. But it's just amazing how you just hustled, man. And just it didn't matter. Like you just put your nose to the grindstone, work ethic, worked hard. People recognized that, didn't give a crap what your degree was, just saw that you were ambitious and hardworking. And that's such, and look where it got you today. So for those people listening that are maybe wondering, hey, could this happen to me? Hey, just work your ass off And
I mean, that was it. Like, it wasn't like I didn't have like a magic idea. It wasn't like some cool app that I made that went big or or even like some magic sauce at the agency. I mean, you know, it really, I got a Steve Martin quote on my wall. It says, "Be so good they can't ignore you." It's just
that's a cool
whatever
quote.
job you're in, just do the best version. You know what I mean? Go way above and beyond. And that was it. It's just like, it's like, yes, you've hired me to like make sure your schedule's on point. No problem. But on top of that, I'm noticing there's a gap here. Why don't you let me fill it? Ooh, I'm noticing this over here. Let me help. And that's just my whole career. Like I have never once in my career felt constrained by my job description.
Yeah.
It's like job description is your starting point of like, let me do that, but just like, let me be awesome because I work hard and do great things.
Yeah. Well, I would use the word industrious to describe you. Industrious.
That's fair.
Yeah. It's interesting. My dad sat me down when I was 9. He said, "Matthew, don't try and always be the best, but try and always do your best." And while that didn't carry with me until now, like until later in my life, I wish I had carried that with me more through junior high and high school and whatever. But, you know, at some point it kicked in, and I've always tried to do what you've done as well, is, you know, try and do your best at whatever you're doing. So that being said, so you got involved in the data and the research, and, you know, it's so amazing. Like I was at a marketing seminar that was put on for business owners that one of my potential clients sent me to on his behalf, even though he wasn't even a client. I was just talking to him, and he owned a print shop, and he sent me to a small little luncheon conference for Xerox, and they were talking about digital marketing, and they were talking about omni-channel marketing, and they have a product that they had called XMPie, and it's a phenomenal platform. But this was in Alberta, where I'm from, and they had a university professor come out from Montreal, and I can't remember his name, but he was from McGill University, and he was the professor for marketing. And the things he was talking about data and using data and how they use data and research to come up with campaigns that kicked ass was just amazing. And it's one thing to, you know, come up with a strategy out of the blue, as you said, but it's completely another thing to find out what the market wants and come up with a message that the market wants, what the problem is, and provide that solution. So besides that, what other part of digital marketing has been your favorite aspects of it?
Oh my gosh, that's such a hard question. And that's such a fair question. I feel like I asked that in all my interviews too. So I'm like, what are you passionate about? So for me, I think that, so the data is a big one. I think what's like weirdly fun for me is I love that it is with every client. It's like there's, all the best practices, right? Like I've got this wide breadth of knowledge across, I would say maybe not every single digital channel, but multiple wide breadth. But every client, it's like this different puzzle that you've got to put together to make it work. And like getting that puzzle together. And then we always talk about it. There is a moment that we have with clients that they get it, where we're putting the puzzle together and all of a sudden they see how it fit together.
All fits together.
And it's working and they're excited and we're excited. And it's like that. It's like they go, I get it. In that moment, sometimes it happens early on. Sometimes it takes a little time. But I think like when you get all those puzzle pieces fit just right into a strategy, it's working super well. It's making them a lot of money. And like, they're like, oh my gosh, I believe all this nerdy stuff that like came together to work really well. And it didn't have to be like a splashy TV commercial. It wasn't even like necessarily like sometimes in like social media, like it's a little splashier, but it's like, gosh, it's like you can tell people and show a lot of diagrams of how all this stuff connects. But actually to finally get it set up and working and like mowing people through that funnel and having it sustained.
Yeah, and the journey.
That's a really fun moment because sometimes it can take some time. Like it's not an immediate, it's not like pay-per-click where it's like, pay-per-click is a lot of parts of it, but it's not like pay-per-click where you turn it on and tomorrow they're getting clicks and they see it. It takes some time.
Exactly. That's the thing. Like when I was at the dealership, they didn't realize why I was asking all these questions. They didn't think it was important. They just wanted effing leads where they're, excuse my French, but that's their language, not mine in the car industry.
Yeah. It's like, I'm trying to make that happen for you.
Yeah. And I was trying to get customer personas of who the person was that was buying the particular vehicle that we were offering, like the entry-level sedan and so on and so forth. So it's just so critical. And there's even large companies, as I've been doing these interviews out there, that don't take the time to do that research and that market research of finding out who your customer is. And so
they don't.
It's just strategically important. That being said, on another note, our industry, to be frank, is predominantly dominated by men. I'm wondering, I'm thinking you would agree. I have noticed
that.
Yeah. And, they say that men are interested in things and women are interested in people, which is one of the reasons why maybe our industry and other industries. Now, I don't know how much truth there is to that or if it's debatable or not, but how would you say that more women could get involved in tech and in, getting involved in an industry like digital marketing if they wanted to do so?
So
what advice would you give?
Well, it's interesting because one of the groups that I work with a lot is moms, right? Oh. So there's this whole group of moms that want basically side hustles, right? Okay. And I cannot tell you, they are great at SEO. I think where it's interesting is that I think a lot of women are it's technical and coding and I don't understand coding. And sure, there's an element of that to digital, but you really don't have to be that good at it to be great at SEO. So my experience with marketing in general, and this is the agency in general, is that volume 9 at the core of it, we say we're broad digital and channel and funnels and all that, but really what it is we're a content agency, right? Okay. We're trying to identify who are we talking to? Yeah. What message are we getting to them? And then how are we connecting it to them, right? Whether it's they're Googling us, they're finding us in an ad, they're connecting with us on social. That's how marketing works, right? It's just different. Yeah. It's different channels you're using. So, and historically marketing has been a female dominated industry. And I find that a lot of women in social media are in social media. Social media is dominated by women.
It's all about people.
It's fun. It's people. It's creative. And I think really what it is that SEO is in some ways ruined SEO, but I think we're pulling it back where it's if you approach SEO from a merely technical, merely coding, merely robotic standpoint, you're kind of losing the game. But in general, I would say the way I got into digital was just trying it, trying some things, having some fun with it. You know what I mean? In a lot of ways, social media was a big way I got into it as well. But I think for women it really is just not to be intimidated by it. There's nothing intimidating. Yeah, don't be intimidated. And it's really writing content's really fun and it's really creative and you can really connect with people. And great SEO is really about great content. And then I do know a lot of really strong technical SEOs who are women. I think it's just they that it's okay. I think if your dharma is more to get into JavaScript or troubleshooting header response codes, the world is your oyster in technical SEO. But I would definitely say even in the years that I've been in it, whereas maybe it started out with a lot of entrepreneurial men trying to jigger a system and figure things out, I'm seeing more and more women getting into the field every day.
That's awesome.
But I think really it's for women who are thinking about they want to get in the field is just start to do what the rest of us did, pick a spot and start. Because right now the demand for digital marketing at every level is super high. People want freelancers, agencies need employees, people need in-house team members. Absolutely. You know what I mean? And they need it at every level. So this is a great time. And honestly, especially for the working mom or the moms who are oh man, I got this kids, I need a non-traditional job, but I need to make a little money.
Freelance.
Digital is the best way to get into it. And they're usually great at writing content. God, the worst thing you could do is hire someone who's classically trained in feels like a classic SEO to write your content. That's a terrible person to do content development. And they don't want to do it either.
It's two different skill sets, isn't it? Content is such an important part of SEO. You can't really do SEO without it. It's incredible.
And honestly, strong content will overcome weaker parts of SEO. So even if your site's technically not great, or maybe your domain authority is not where you want it to be, blah, 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 strong content will overcome all of that.
Absolutely. So what other factors do you think are important when it comes to ranking high on Google besides content? Or is content, The only thing.
So, I think all the traditional,
I
think all the, it's such a loaded question, right? So, and that,
I know. I know.
Rank high for what?
So I get your thoughts on the subject.
Yeah, right. Well, hey, you know what? One day my hope for the world is we can all stop talking about ranking, because it's not a real thing, because there's no such thing as like a number one ranking. It's number one for who? It's personalization. That's why Google reports on average top position versus position, because it's not a real metric. But I would say in general, like, so we've always talked about like the 3 core buckets for SEO, right? Which is technical. And, Google talks about this a lot. I think the way they talk about it is trust. But it's just, do you have a good technical site? And there is a whole lot that goes underneath that. But it is, how are you delivering the information on your website? And is it mobile friendly? And is it secure? And blah, blah, blah. So you got that element. And then content is I would say the core piece of it. Do you have really great content? And by really great content, I don't mean, did you super optimize your content? That's not really great content. But are you doing a great job talking to your audience and answering their questions? And then there's always this third box too of what, I like to call brand signals, because it's a little more encompassing than just links. Yes, links is a part of that, but it is in general, who's talking about you? How big is your social audience? Who's linking to you? How are you getting covered, right? Those types of things. And yes, are people linking to you? That is a piece of it. Are you on third-party platforms like Google My Business? All that stuff. There's this like whole category of how is your brand being developed off of your core website. So in those 3 buckets sort of together are representative of a really strong SEO strategy.
Absolutely.
But I would say far and away, content is the meaty, like it's the most, like if there's one thing you're going to just nail, it's the content you want to nail.
Content. Yeah, I would say so. I know one guest I interviewed, he's built a 7-figure agency, multiple 7-figure agency without spending $1 on advertising, and it's all been content creation. So what do you think are the most important elements when developing a content strategy?
So I think you got to start with who the heck are we talking to and why are we talking to them? It has to start with your user, right? Because it's not about getting a billion people to your content. It's about getting the right people to your content.
Oh yeah, so, that's a good one.
Right. And then once you understand like
your content, but
then it's like once you understand who are we talking to, and why we're talking to them, and then you can start filtering that into a strategy of like, okay, where's the gap in our content now? In terms of a content strategy, I always, it starts to turn into like who you are as a company, right? E-commerce is going to have a very different content strategy than a B2B
service-based business.
Yep. So, but like really, when you think about your content, you want to start about like minimum viable product, right? Because like looking at a comprehensive content strategy can be really overwhelming. So, but it's like, okay, minimum viable product. Like, let's say, come hell or high water, our target audience is on our site. Do they have the content they need to feel comfortable to take a next step? If the answer is no, that's the content you want to start with, right? So on B2B, that's almost always grab your sales team and go, let's talk about this site. What questions are we getting? Does this site do a great job getting someone feeling comfortable to fill in our lead form? Stats tell us that 60% of the buying process is done before they fill in that lead form. So is the site successfully getting our prospects through 60% of the buying cycle? For most B2B businesses, it is not. That's where you want to start. On e-commerce, it almost certainly starts with your product detail page. Is our product detail page doing a great job? Gosh, and like that, some of the advice I give, if people are like, I'm having trouble, is like, so you have a strong Amazon strategy. Most e-commerce sites do. Amazon forced you to put all this great stuff on your Amazon listing page. Go look at that and go look at your product detail page and make sure that the core substantive information that you're putting on Amazon, you're also including on your product detail page, because Amazon is requiring that because it's good for your user, not because it's good for you, but because it's good for your user.
Good for your user.
Right. So do the same thing, right? The reason they're requiring you to put all this information about your product specs is people want that before they buy your product.
They do.
The reason why they're requiring reviews is because people are more likely to buy your product if they read reviews. That's why it's all there. So it's not because Amazon's got a strong SEO strategy. It's because they know that's what people buy off of.
What the users want.
So that's what you really want to do is think about like, okay, before we go nuts on a content strategy, is the core content on our site where it needs to be? And in every business is different, right? So like we work with a lot of brands, the natural space. Okay. Do you have a really strong about us page if you're a natural product? Because that doesn't matter for a lot of e-commerce, but it does matter in natural because your audience wants to know why you're doing what you're doing and what you believe in. That's critical. So it's like, so you really want to think about, okay, who's our audience? What kind of content do they need to feel comfortable taking a next step with us? Okay. And if that's not there, that's where you got to start. And then from there, then you could start layering in, okay, well, all right, how do we want to get in front of more people? Maybe where are our competitors developing content that we are not? What are things that we know more about than other people? Where do we want to be thought leaders? Where do we want to start connecting with our audience? So you really always want to think about your content strategy in context with how do we connect with our audience? And then yes, where you can work SEO in, but I would never advocate long-term for a content strategy driven by SEO. You want a content strategy driven by sales and by your user, and then wherever you can weave SEO in, great. SEO should be this helpful tool. Like B2B is a great example.
So it shouldn't be the foundation. It shouldn't be the foundation. It should be the a secondary. It shouldn't be the primary motivation. It should be the secondary thing, because what you want is they're solving the problem for your users based on, and to drive sales and allow us.
And there's some tools and some processes. We have actually just gave a keynote in Vegas on this. SEO we have a lot of tools and cool things available to SEO content. But what some of those tools do is they give you a window into what your audience wants. Like this is back to like being data driven. So like, for example, like a classic approach to SEO is, okay, we want to rank for used cars Denver. So I'm going to go to an SEO tool, and the SEO tool is going to tell me all the words I got to weave into the used car Denver page. I'm going to create this shallow page about used cars Denver. I'm going to shove the word used cars Denver in a bunch. And then this thing told me there's 30 words I got to weave in. So I'm going to shove those into, I'm going to build a footer of links to link to my site and all the different trucks I got. I'm going to launch that thing, and it's SEO, right? That's a classic content strategy via SEO.
Yes.
What I would advocate is go, okay, we want to talk to people in Denver and we sell used cars. Let's create a great page about our philosophy, how we approach things, the types of cars we have, blah, blah, blah. Like, let's create a great site, a great experience. And then, okay, we really like this keyword, used cars Denver. We're pretty sure that's exactly what our audience is searching for. Let's run it through the tools. And then, oh man, this tool is telling me that there's this category of words that I don't have on the page. And the words are things like Ford, Nissan. It's like, oh my gosh, people want to know what types of cars we carry. Let's list them. Let's talk about it. Or like there's a word here, finance. Like, okay, yeah. People are interested in financing options. And like, let's make sure that the key information. And so instead of just shove it, like you could cheat. You could go, we offer financing. Check out today. You could go, no, the reason this is showing up is people are genuinely curious about financing. Let's talk about it. Yeah. What if I've got bad credit, all that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. They might be really like, you might find like sales process. Like, why is that in there? And it's like, oh, you know what? People are worried about when they hit the lot. Am I going to get besieged by your salespeople? And are they going to plague me through the lot? Right. Or there's just all these concerns. Right. So it's just like, you want to make people feel really comfortable. You want to make it feel really easy. You want it, like just whatever your experience is, like what's special about your dealership. And you use, instead of just shoving those words in to game the system, use it more as a map of like, okay, these tools exist and these words are coming because artificial intelligence is telling us that these are relevant concepts. And it's like, let's think about why this is showing up and work that relevant concept in. So that's how I would advocate. So it's a very secondary step. But when you do that, so we do this with all of our clients. We discovered this years ago. We were working on an account. This is part of my keynote. And it was a rafting company. And we did this exact process. And they wanted to rank for Colorado rafting. If you know anything about it, it is a highly competitive industry. It becomes more and more competitive every year because there's no barrier to entry. You can't rent the river. So basically, get a bus, get some rafts. You got a rafting outfitting company. And fun fact, less and less people search for rafting every year. It is a less popular sport than it was 10 years ago.
Oh, wow. So the barrier to entry is low and the demand is low. The trend of the demand is more and more.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So unnecessarily competitive. You know what I mean? It's really hard to win in this category. So we get this rafting company, we run them through these tools, and we're seeing this stuff pop up like weather, outfit. And it's just like, man, why is this stuff? And, you know, we could have cheated. We could have been like, we got great weather in sunny Colorado. Come check us out. But instead we're like, why are all these words popping up? We went back to their user persona. I was like, all right, we know that the person most likely to book a rafting trip is a planning mom. That was our core persona, right? It's most certainly a mom.
Based on research.
She's our super planner, right? And moms want to know everything. They want to know where they got to park. They want to know if you're going to give their kids snacks. They're going to want to know what's going to happen if their kid needs to go to the bathroom halfway through the rafting trip, right? All these questions, right?
Yeah.
And so we were like, okay, all these words are popping up because they want to know the answer to these questions. Like, they don't want to just know generically about the weather. They want to know what our weather policy is. They want to know what the best time of year is to book one of these things. Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So we just were like, let's give all this helpful information. And so we really went through and was like, what are all these questions that people are asking about rafting trips? So was it successful from an SEO standpoint? Yes. So like rankings and organic traffic and some of the metrics you'd expect to see from a successful SEO strategy. But then we saw metrics that you would not expect to see from a successful SEO strategy, which is that we had higher conversion rates on the page and we had a higher average order value, which is not typical in an SEO campaign. It was a great, and what we realized is that we were improving conversion rates and increasing average order value also by this strategy. So yes, it was great for SEO, but really what it was great for the users, which made it great for the rafting outfitters.
Wow.
So it really just kind of comes down to do a great job writing content for your user. Really good things follow if you do that.
Absolutely. Hey, what are your thoughts on AI assisted content creation?
So, I mean, I'm all for, gosh, can AI give me a window into stuff? So there's some tools, ClearScope, SEO Surfer, SEMrush does this, where they kind of give you an idea of like, man, this is kind of stuff you should cover contextually. This should be in your outline. These are topics you should be thinking about. I'm all for that stuff. I have yet to see content created by a robot that I loved. And honestly, I think a lot of it's about to get a major step backwards with some of the new updates, like this new helpful content update from Google. I have yet to see artificial intelligence content that I love. And I mean, honestly, it just, when you take the time to write good content, good things happen. And that's hard to do via a robot.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you have any tips for creating evergreen content?
Well, it depends on what your industry is and brand and all that stuff. But let's usually evergreen
content. Give an example of.
Sure. So usually evergreen content is a topic that comes up more with B2B companies, right? Because you have more core stable content, and I'd say that the biggest thing is you start with great website architecture, and that minimum viable, like what content needs to exist on this site and how do we make this a clear site to navigate and get to? And when you're thinking about your evergreen content, just know that it doesn't have to be set it and forget it. Always watch your data. And this is actually a great pickup. I mean, a lot of us are grumbling about GA4 because that's real complicated to install.
Yes.
But once we get there, once it's installed, what's really great about GA4 is because Google's moving from this cookie-based tracking system to an event-based system, you can now track, so let's say you have an evergreen page. You can now really track in more detail what's happening on your page. Are people scrolling down? Are people watching my video? Are people filling in my contact form? Are they downloading this white paper I want them to? What part of this site, page are they reading? So you're going to get a lot more data about how to really make these pages better. And that would be my big approach to evergreen content is look at your evergreen page, make sure you've got great events because you're going to have to set events for every element on the page that you want to track, but then go back and track what is happening on this page. Is this working the way that I want?
Is it doing what I want it to do?
Yep.
Making sure you establish the purpose of the page before you even start for anything, which obviously, as you've talked about, is based on your persona and your research. If you don't have that, it's amazing how many businesses want to just get to the end with it. In Dan Kennedy, he's been an influence in my life. His book, The Ultimate Marketing Plan, he talks about the 3 aspects of marketing: or medium, message, and market. And you need to know, everybody just wants to jump on the medium and slap an ad up on Facebook or Google or whatever the case may be. They don't want to do the first part, which you've talked about, which is so important: the media market, the market part. determining who your market is, who you're trying to target. And then based on that, coming up with a message. And then you can take that message to any medium you want, whether it's SEO or Google Ads or billboards or whatever the case may be. So yeah, it's so critical to do that. Hey, do you think active link building is still an important part of SEO?
Oh, I hate when you say active link building. Are gaining links important for SEO? Yes. I am not a huge advocate of 95% of what you would put in the category of active link building.
Okay. So what I mean by that, doing linking, like link outreach and, I guess there's people that talk about natural link building versus, more reaching out to, other websites to try and get links and so on and so forth. Yeah. I just wonder what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah. So I would say overarchingly, links are always going to be, I think, a part of Google's algorithm. And you have to be really, really careful about any sort of link work that you do. Even like how much Google's starting to talk about links again. You'll notice like Google goes in waves, right? Where like all of a sudden they're cracking down on links. All of a sudden they're cracking down. So like for the last 2 years, we've seen more and more overstuffed content make its way into SERPs. And Google's finally going, okay, boom, hitting you down again. I'm bracing for when they do the same thing on links, but not bracing from my perspective because we don't do link building, not from that perspective. When we talk about links as an agency, again, different tactics that work, far and away, the best tactic by far that I've seen for links is link earning via great content. I mean, I cannot tell you when we write content, how many links I just watch pour in from our content. So like there's that part of it. And then, yes, I think you could do a little bit of outreach, keep it in mind, keeping your friendly partners in mind and all of that stuff. But like the, guest blog posting strategies, I'd be really leery of that. Anybody who's charging you for a link, I'd be really leery of that. We know that also like over the years, Google quietly devalues like some of these well-known guys who are selling links. So like a link on Forbes is not worth what everybody thinks it is. It sounds great. Wow, I look it up. But like Google just knows what they're doing and they're just quietly like, yeah, that's fine that you have it. We don't care. And then, you know what I mean? We know that like Google pays attention to how many people are searching for your brand, what's happening on social media. Like there's all these signals that happen. Now that being said, if you're a brand new baby company, you got to get that profile built up. Like there's no two ways about it. You got to find a way, to do a little PR, to do a little outreach, like to do some NAP consistency stuff. Like you need to get the wheel going. But I would always be super duper leery of anybody who's just sort of selling active link building.
What do you think the future of SEO holds?
I don't know. We seem to be on kind of a constant SEO roller coaster. So, in terms of the future of SEO, you know what I mean? I think we're going to keep riding this like Google algorithm wave. You know what I mean? I think where things are going to get really interesting as we get more into like Web 3.0, where people aren't okay with data tracking and types of that. You know what I mean? Honestly, like I would be so stoked to see a predominant search engine that isn't Google, that isn't collecting data long-term. And, I think that's going to make SEO even more impactful and stronger because now like SEO, it really doesn't depend on storing your data and like having personal data. So I think it's going to emphasize the importance of SEO over other channels, which I think is going to be great. And yeah, I would love to see a world long-term where we're not beholden to the great temple of Google. So that's, I guess, I don't know if that's really where the future is going, but that is my hope. My hope is that we, in 10 years, we don't have to be talking only about Google and Amazon, which is kind of where predominantly
where we're at right now
are at the moment. Yeah.
It seems that Web 3.0 and the metaverse, the fact that you'll be able to put on a headset and go into a virtual store and buy something from Amazon in a virtual environment and have it delivered to your house. or a retail clothing store I can't remember that my wife would rather love shopping at without having to leave the house and buy a nice purse. How it's going to change and how voice search is going to change and searching for things with your voice and finding things. I don't know what, it's pretty unbelievable. I've only just dipped my toe in a little bit into Web 3.0. and it's very interesting to see how it's going to all work out.
I know. Well, and businesses now should be getting really comfortable even with just video, because like soon we're going to have to all get comfortable with virtual reality. But like as a nice step into that, consumers more and more want to consume their content via audio, via video, not having to read everything. So in really thinking about that, because SEO will continue to adjust for that as well, that there are different forms of content that people want to consume, and it's not all just text on page.
Yeah, exactly. It's not all just text on paper. Video, the future of video is really, really, really going to be mega important. And even if you take your video and do a voiceover with animated text, I mean, I think that's still engaging to a certain degree. I'd rather listen. Like, for instance, here's the thing. You know, the articles, I listen to them. There's a play button at the top for a lot of articles. I would rather listen to that on 2 times speed than read it myself and sit there and just listen.
Well, and it's just, it's where the world's headed. And I think the biggest advice I give companies is just start. I think everybody's so worried about like video quality or it's perfect. It's like, listen, you got to just start getting your toes wet. Just try it. Yeah. You don't got to start a TikTok trend. Just
start.
Give her a shot.
Yeah. That's a great way to end it. That's a great takeaway. Just start, It's been a pleasure having you here. Really great. Thank you so much for sharing everything that you've shared. And how can our listeners connect with you online if they choose to do so?
You know what? Best way to connect with me online is either, come to our website, b9digital.com, or, I'm probably the most active on LinkedIn as a social platform. So find me on LinkedIn.
All right. We'll make sure to include that in the show notes. It's very easy, by the way. It's just look for linkedin.com/in/optimization and you'll find her. So Natalie, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for being here. It's been great to have you on the show.
Awesome. Thank you, Matt. I really appreciate it. This was fun.